Hello and welcome to another thrilling episode of Potato Cast with Internet Potato. This is a recording of my round 4 match with the other Doug in this tournament, Zzzman74, and this is Fighting Walloon's 3 Revised Core Teaching League. I'm trying to go through all of the runner and corp decks. This is round 4, so I've cycled around on runners, and I'm playing as Chaos Theory on the bottom. Which I think is probably the strongest runner in this format due to the reasonable breaker suite, in-faction multi-access and draw, and access to Magnum Opus. So my opening hand, my first one, looks pretty reasonable. It's not great. I would rather have Magnum Opus to start with, or a test run so I can get that on the board immediately. But Diesel, Modded, and to a lesser extent All-Nighter are all helpful. Unfortunately, I got greedy and decided to mulligan, hoping to get something that would get me a Magnum Opus from turn 1. And I mulligan into a significantly worse hand. So it's nice that I've got Fem and Retrieval Run. It's nice that I have Battering Ram, but I'm probably not going to want to use Maker's Eye very much until the very end of the game because he's on Jinteki and will have a bunch of snares and other stuff in his deck. And similarly, HQI is not as useful in the early game. And none of these things actually build my board state, so I'm pretty unhappy with this mulligan. But we'll just do what we can. So the basic game plan is going to be to try to get my econ set up by digging really hard, clicking to draw because I mulliganed away the Diesel, and getting Fem in the bin so that I can Retrieval Run it out. And, from the beginning I know that I'm probably just going to let him get a couple of uncontested agendas because I can't spend my turns running and checking everything when I need to be building up. So, Modded is not exactly what I want to see. Retrieval Run, not what I need right now. But, we'll just take it as it comes. So I don't want to burn through a bunch of recursion, and I don't want to, I want to have some redundancy for when I take some inevitable net damage. So I'm going to go ahead and mod it out the Battering Ram now, because it's about the cheapest I can, I'm ever going to see it hit the board. It's a little bit unfortunate that it takes up 2 of my MU. I'd rather put it on Dinosaurus, but it's okay in the sense that with Chaos Theory's ID ability, I still have 3 MU available for Magnum Opus and another breaker, and then, I won't need to install Dinosaurus until I get down to putting my 3rd breaker down on the board. So even though he's installed 2 naked remotes, I'm reasonably confident that one of them is going to be an agenda, because I've demonstrated that I'm not going to check everything he puts down, but I'm still not really in a state where I can do that without losing tempo. So I'm just going to keep on building up, get some money, and dump Fem in the bin so that I have access to it with Retrieval Run on a later turn. So looking at his board state, he's doing pretty well, right? Like, he's got something down with an advancement on it. It might be a Ronin. It might be a failed trap. He's scoring some points, and he's doing well on credits. He's up at 9. Losing the Retrieval Run isn't too bad when he scores the Brain Trust, because I've got the second one in hand. He's got enough credits right now critically to threaten a snare, and also a punitive Counter-Strike trace. So I'm just going to do what I do, draw things, install things. I'm installing All-Nighter, even though it feels kind of like a waste, because the reason there's 2 reasons that I have a single All-Nighter in the deck. One of them is for this case, where I see the All-Nighter before I see a Magnum Opus, and it's sort of like banking a click for later when I can use it for 2 credits instead of for a single credit or a single draw. And the other one is that I have a 1 of notoriety in here, so All-Nighter makes it a little bit easier to run all 3 centrals and get that last point. So the most successful Corp archetypes that I've played so far, which is to say the 2 times I've actually won as Corp, one was a Wayland straight up Glacier deck, where you use high strength barriers to keep the runner out, because the core set fractors are not very good, and they're really inefficient for high strength barriers. And the other one I had success with was a punitive Counter-Strike PE. And the idea there is that you have in-faction, celebrity gift, and you just splash in all the operation econ. You can use some asset econ, knowing that they'll be hesitant to check every single remote, and you leverage the PE ability plus neural EMP, plus having them steal a 3-pointer to get the flat line. So I'm not sure. I haven't really seen. I don't think I've seen any of his influence yet. So I don't know whether he's on that path or whether he's going for like a more taxing glacier type of build. Maybe using Ash to drag me through an expensive run a couple of times. So my continuing efforts to draw into Magnum Opus have failed, and I've gotten some more multi-access, which I don't particularly want. At this point, I just dumped the Maker's Eye, both of them, thinking that if I need to try to score off of R&D, I'll either do it with single accesses, which are safer, or use indexing, which is the best multi-access probably in the core set, and certainly against Jinteki when I expect snares to be flying around everywhere. I hang on to a Tinkering, which is helpful for getting a surprise score, especially because both Battering Ram and Gordian retain their strength for the run. So you can make reasonably efficient runs against deep servers with this. So again, he installs a couple of new remotes, and I'm pretty confident that one of these is going to be an agenda, and I sort of feel like I have to start checking these things, even though I'm sort of behind. Luckily, I top deck an Infiltration, which shifts the odds significantly in my favor because I can check one with no risk, and I'm sort of expecting that there's like probably a trap, an agenda, and something else on the board, maybe like a Ronin. So luckily I pick the right one to expose, Sur 5 being the snare, and then go take a look at what else he has out here. Happy to see Melange and get that off the board. He's doing well for credits right now, but he's really only one expensive Ice Res away from being too poor to snare me. And then check the other one and find the Security Force. Losing Stimhack sucks a little bit in the sense that it's a tool like Tinkering that can give you surprise scores and win the game for you. But against PE, I'm not really interested in taking a lot of brain damage. I don't want to end a turn where he can, do like a double neural or triple neural or score and double neural. Anyway, we don't want to get mixed up in that. So I'm thinking when he installs and double advances this, it might be an agenda, but I'm not willing to go in on it because my first priority is getting the Magnum Opus out. And so I basically have just enough clicks with the all-nighter to get Magnum Opus out, make a little money, and make sure that I don't end up losing something to net damage if he scores it out. So now that I've got the money button available, I feel pretty free to basically continue setting up my rig, and know that very soon it will be hard for him to lock me out of anywhere. So using modded to right here, I'm thinking about whether I want to use it on Gordian or HQI. I'm choosing Gordian because HQI still doesn't feel like a great long-term decision for me health-wise. So get the Gordian out, and now with the Fem in the bin, and Magnum Opus on the board, and 2 retrieval runs in hand, and Tinkering, I feel like there's really no way that he's going to lock me out of any server at this point. So it took 8 turns to get there, but here we are, and now I basically feel like I just need to be able to money up, run smart, make sure that I don't put myself in a position where I'm going to get flatlined, and just take it from there. So critically at this point now he's on 3 credits, and so first of all I know that he can't res like a neural katana or anything too punishing. The worst thing right now would be, or he can't res roto turret either, which is 4 credits. So I know that I can run HQ pretty safely, and also he doesn't have enough money to trigger a snare. So this is kind of the ideal time to start clearing the board out, checking what he has in hand, etc. So the things I'm keeping in mind are that snare costs 4, that Junebug costs 1 to trigger, and I've forgotten what Ghost Branch and Aggressive Secretary cost, so hopefully I don't encounter any of those. Find an agenda. Feels good, man. And since he's on 1 credit, I feel like he doesn't have a lot of options in terms of ice that could be protecting R&D. Certainly nothing that could be that dangerous. So I'll take a poke at it, and if he does bottom himself on credits, then I feel like I have a real advantage here. So I'm considering whether I pay to break it or not, decide not to so that I can just make some more money, knowing that next turn he's basically going to have to, even if he clicks for credits 3 times, he's not going to be able to threaten a snare. And if he does anything other than click for credits, then I'm probably going to have a chance to clear the board out and check these advanced servers and make sure that I have enough clicks and credits to deal with the consequences of like face checking a Ghost Branch or whatever. Maybe I keep mentioning Ghost Branch because I'm recording this audio after the fact, and I know what happens later on. It's kind of tags are not super strong in the core set, because really the only punishment you have is closed accounts, private security force, which is a thing, I guess, and psychographics. And there's really no way to give bulk tags, so psychographics is pretty hard to pull off. So since he's on 0 credits, I'm safe to check everything as far as I know. Junebug costs 1 to use, so I'll clear it off. Ghost Branch, it turns out, doesn't cost anything to trigger. There's only 1 advancement on it, so it's not that big a deal. So we'll clear it out because I don't want him to have a bank for Trick of Light tokens. Clear the tag. I don't really have anything that I can't lose, but I don't want there to be any surprises with closed accounts. So this is, I think, the 3rd turn on in a row where he ends the turn with only 3 credits in hand, or 3 or less credits, which is the sweet spot for running against Jinteki. So I feel confident here, just taking some money, taking a poke at R&D, seeing what's going on. Say hey to R&D. Hey R&D. Thanks for the agenda. And again, I have enough money, and he doesn't have a snare threat, so I'm just going to keep on poking HQ and see what else is going on in there. So Victor 1.0 is the first code gate I've seen so far, which is a fun piece of trivia about this game. If anybody asks you, hey, when's the first time you saw Victor 1.0? You can say it was turn 10. So he's playing Celebrity Gift with 6 cards in hand, which, and he shows me 1 agenda, a snare, a couple of ice, and a trick of light. So I know there's 1 snare still on the board. There's none in archives as far as I know. And there's one in hand. So that means there might be a snare left in R&D I have to account for. But there's not two. So I think I only have two Maker's Eyes in this deck, but if I had more than two, then I would feel free to actually go ahead and use those now, because I've seen where all the snares are. If I was playing a little smarter, I probably also would have counted the influence on Victor and Icewall and Ghost Branch and try to figure out how much influence he has left. Since I'm on 5 points, I also don't have to worry about punitive Counter-Strike anymore. So I haven't really been doing a good job so far recently of staying ahead of him enough on money that I can avoid punitive kill. But now I really don't have to worry about it. So given that I know there's a snare, a brain trust, and some ice in his hand, and I know that he had a Trick of Light on top of R&D, unless the sixth card, the one that he didn't show me when he did Celebrity Gift, is the second snare, I'm pretty sure that one of these two cards is going to be an agenda. Since, the only ice that I know about that he has is Victor, so I could safely run server 9 most likely and either click through it or pay with Gordian. I decided to be really conservative and check R&D first. I'm not really sure why I did that, but it's a thing that I did because with 2 clicks left, it's possible that he uses, if I pick the wrong server, if I run the snare first and then go to run the brain trust, then he can Nisei and prevent me from stealing it, which would be a pretty big blunder. So that was definitely a misplay on my part. I should have recognized that both server 9 and server 10 could be checked on the same turn safely and probably guarantee me the win. But anyway, better to be lucky than good, so we'll just take that to the bank. Yeah, I think that getting a traditional sort of PE 1,000 cuts kill is pretty hard to do with the core set because the agendas don't really lend that. Like, you don't have one pointers like Clone Retirement. You don't have and a lot of the utility one pointers. I don't play much Jinteki, so I can't think of them, like House of Knives, stuff like that. So, while you can theoretically do it with like Ronins and advanced traps and stuff like that, it's like if the runner just kind of takes their time and builds up their rig, then it's pretty hard to pull that off. So I think that the better approach for Jinteki in this format is either punitive or just kind of making a good stuff Glacier deck and taking advantage of the fact that you have 3 Celebrity Gifts for 0 influence, and the rest of the Operation Econ is pretty cheap to splash, comparatively. So I'm playing NBN. This is the 4th round. This is the 4th corp. It's no accident this is the last one I'm playing. I think that NBN is in a pretty poor position in this card pool, mostly because basically the only thing they can do reasonably well is trace and tag, and there's really not that much tag punishment in the core set. So without Scorched Earth, you basically have closed accounts, which is fine, but it doesn't end the game. It might open a window for you. And you have psychographics if you can get the runner to take a ton of tags, which is difficult or impossible if the runner is kind of playing carefully and being diligent about clearing tags. So I think that the approach that I'm going for here is to try to tax them out, um, make tags into tax, and then use ash and red herrings to make it hard to steal agendas in the late game. So I think this was actually kind of a misplay on my part. I think you really do have to rush the first agenda and get 2 points on the board in order to have a shot at winning on agenda points in this format, just because it's so hard to keep the runner out in the late game and actually get a scoring remote that you can score out of. So putting a data raven over here isn't a great idea, I think. I think it probably would have been better to put the wraparound there, partially because I'll end up being poor if I end up rezzing it, and partially because he can still run through it and steal, and then I'll be really in the hole, being down 4 credits, down 2 points. And with an open R&D, open HQ, and something that won't actually end the run on my remote. So that I think was a mistake, especially because having only one agenda in my opening hand means that R&D is probably pretty loaded. So, unsurprisingly, leaving open HQ against Gabe, he's going to hit it and see what he can find. Having pheromones is cool because he's basically going to get to the point where, if he gets enough early runs, then I basically have to either spend a turn to purge or just accept the fact that he's going to be able to do a click for 2 credits and checking HQ more or less once per turn. So he imps green level clearance, which I'm not terribly concerned about. I would have been much less happy if he had imped the toll booth, which I'm going to need in the later game to get out of the hole. But he doesn't check my remote, so I'm going to go ahead and score and fully expect him to rip at least 1 point. Fully expect him to rip at least 1 point off the top of R&D, because at this point now, I've seen 6, 7, 8 out of my 49 card deck, and only one of them was an agenda. So there's a lot of agendas left in R&D. This Maker's Eye run, I think, is really well timed. He's poked HQ enough times that, there's not that much in there. And R&D is very likely going to give something up. But because I've been a virtuous net player and my karma is clean, he comes up empty and doesn't hit anything. Now, if I was some scumbag CI player, then he probably would have scored 7 points right there. Friends don't let friends play CI. So if I was him, I might have used the imp token to trash that Adonis campaign, or used the recurring pheromones credit to trash it, just because Adonis is such solid econ. I've got a remote. He probably thinks I don't have a lot of agendas in hand, so it's definitely going straight in there, and it'll be more of a pain to deal with in the remote than it will be in hand. I am thinking that R&D must be super loaded right now, since the top 2 cards are non-agendas right now. So there's 37 cards and 10 agendas left in it. So I've got to put something over there, if nothing else, to discourage him from just making free runs on R&D every single turn. Likewise, I expect to be drawing a lot of agendas soon, so I put something that'll actually end the run over HQ. His fractor choices, wraparound is going to cost him 2 credits to break no matter what, basically. If he has Morningstar, it costs 1 credit. If he has Aurora or Battering Ram, it's going to be 2 credits to break. So it's actually decently taxing. On the off chance that he's running Darwin or Crypsis, then I have the advantage that he needs to still install Fractor, which is going to be a big tempo hit because they're all expensive, in order to get cheap runs. So, we'll keep him out and start shutting off the flow of money. And I know that like until I have the 8 credits to actually res the toll booth, I don't have good R&D protection. On the other hand, this access doesn't do anything for him because he already saw these cards on the Maker's Eye run, so I'm not really that concerned about it. Though trashing the Enigma is kind of a bummer because that is a really nice, cheap piece of ice that would do a lot of work right now. Like in fact, looking back at it, him trashing this Enigma is probably that could be the turning point of this game, because as you'll see, managing my credits becomes a challenge, and being able to reliably keep them out of R&D with that super expensive toll booth becomes a challenge. So being able to set up some drip econ protected with ice that will discourage him from running, won't necessarily keep him out, so I can save some ice for a scoring remote, and will gain me some more money with the pad. With the pop-up windows where we're going with this. So he's got enough credits that he can go and take out both of my Adonis campaigns, which I think would probably be the best play if he had perfect information about what was on the board. So I'm thinking about whether I want to res that, and the answer is no, I don't want to res the Data Raven. Spending 4 credits will, make me broke, give him at best a tag and a power counter, but probably just a tag. Or maybe he'll just jack out, and then I won't be able to res either of my Adonis campaigns, and I'll be even further in the hole for getting a toll booth up. So luckily he doesn't trash it and runs the second remote. Pop-up putting me on 5 is nice because then I won't be, still won't be able to res both Adonises this turn. But I will be able to, it gets me a little closer to bouncing back up into the range where I can, play hedge fund and threaten to res Ice will actually end the run. So he does choose to trash this Adonis campaign, which seems good. And then take a poke at R&D. So I believe this is a fresh card that he hasn't seen yet. So I really wish that I had, maybe I probably should have put this this wraparound over R&D just to make it a little bit harder for him to get in there. But instead, I'm starting to kind of think about what's my score remote going to look like, and I'm hesitant to install ice on R&D because I know that at some point I'm going to need to score out. So this is yet another turn where R&D is wide open. I've got enough drip econ on the board that I feel like that part of my game plan is pretty well squared away. He's not really going, with only 2 credits in hand, he's not really in a position where he can challenge these remotes and clear out my my econ without hurting himself pretty significantly. I should have mentioned that I'm not installing naked stuff because of bank job against Gabe. So even if it's just a pop-up window, that will discourage him somewhat from just checking everything and ripping off bank jobs willy-nilly. So, here that's happening. But when he knows it's just a pop-up window, he's definitely going to check it and take the credits and have another look. So this isn't terrible because, now I've gained 2 credits off of this. He's lost 2 credits off of, what the bank job would have originally yielded. And since it's just a pad campaign, like he's either going to trash it and take a decent hit, which he does, or leave it and I get some more econ. So now I finally have enough money that I can res the toll booth. And here come the agendas. So let's start getting stuff on the board. Now I'm thinking really hard about what my scoring remote's going to look like, because in 2 turns my Adonis campaign is going to run out, and I'll be in a position where I need to start, jamming points to get through this game. So here I think that this was probably not the ideal time to run. He might suspect that I'm starting to fill up with agendas and I'm just trying to like real sneaky sneak something out. But since he's seen Adonis campaigns, pad campaigns, and Ash is also 3 credits to trash, there's kind of a low chance he was going to be able to get into that remote after paying for the pop-up window and still have the credits to trash it. So it probably would have been better if you had clicked for credits or clicked to draw a couple times and then make the run when he has enough money. So we get another agenda, and now I'm thinking, okay, I gotta make something happen here. So it's really not ideal that I'm putting non-end the run eyes on this remote. But I'm kind of thinking that if I can make it expensive enough to use red herrings or ash to keep him out, then that's one option. And if I make it to the point where he has to choose between taking a bunch of tags or getting into the remote, then I'll open up a psychographics play later in the game. So I do have only 1 psychographics in here, which is just sort of because I expect most players will clear tags, and is sort of insurance against the ones that do end up going tag me. So Aurora hits the board, which makes me kind of sad, because with pheromones and Gabe, it's actually like totally reasonable to get into HQ every turn. And there's a bit of confusion here for a couple of minutes between the recurring credits and Aurora's ability. So I'll just talk to you, gentle listener, gentle viewer. So I'm looking at the board. I'm starting to think like God, I'm gonna need to purge pheromones at pretty much the first opportunity now, because he's going to get free runs on HQ. I know that R&D is loaded up. I gotta get a scoring remote together. I don't have a lot of ice to spare over HQ. On the other hand, with 2 agendas in hand right now, I'm probably going to, I'm going to be jamming agendas in that remote for a little while. So it's probably going to be like, best case scenario, I install an agenda and do 2 other things this turn, score it the next turn, and by that point I'll probably have lost the other agenda because he's running HQ every single turn. And he'll also have like a shitload of counters on pheromones. So like my next 3 turns are pretty much going to be installing an agenda, then scoring an agenda, and then purging, unless something else has come up that absolutely needs to be dealt with. And like at that point, he's probably going to have like 6 or 7 counters on pheromones at least, and we'll be making runs indiscriminately and at will against HQ. So I feel like this is actually like a really awful position to be in, especially because even though I've got drip coming in, my server 1 is pretty expensive to actually get rezzed, and I'm still in this position where the only ice over R&D is really expensive, and I can't afford to res it immediately without cutting off my options. So like if he runs R&D this turn, I can't res that. Well, okay, sorry. Take that back. If I get to the point where I'm jamming agendas in server 1 and he runs R&D, I'm probably not going to be able to afford to res the toll booth because it will leave me too poor to actually score out the jammed agenda the next turn. So, I'm trying to think about like what kind of deck building decisions did I make that put me in this position. And one of them, which I kind of knew going in, is that I don't have enough end the run stuff in here. I think I have 3 Enigmas, 2 or 3 toll booth, and a couple of wraparounds, which like on the surface is a lot of stuff that ends the run, but practically speaking, I'm not going to be resing more than 1 toll booth unless I happen to get like a priority requisition score. Wraparound is not going to be very taxing in the long run. And that basically leaves me with like, Enigma and face checks. And so, I'm in this position where I really don't have a lot of ways to keep him out. And I'd sort of planned on like that was going to be a thing that happens, and I will need to use ash and red herrings to get scores. But like I also don't have a ton of econ. So I don't know. This deck is just a fucking train wreck. I hate it. I hate it so much. Anyway, I think that this interlude is almost at an end, and Pheromone's run on HQ with Aurora is coming to its logical conclusion, which is stealing a false lead from me. Now, on the plus side, well, there's not really a plus side to getting this agenda stolen, because false lead is sort of part of the way that I can jam out the last 3-pointer if it comes down to it. But here at least I can I have the burden lifted from me of spending 4 turns jamming and scoring agendas, and instead I'm going to spend 2 turns jamming and scoring agendas, and will be able to purge on the 3rd turn instead of the 5th turn, which is some serious cold comfort. So anyway, looks like we got our pheromone straightened out. Hitting it again steals the 2nd agenda. So on the plus side, God, there is no plus side. This is just turning into a fucking bloodbath. At any rate, I hope I purge soon. Well, anyway, I have to jam this because I know he's going to keep checking HQ because he can do it for free. So I'm in this really super awkward position where I can't let stuff sit in HQ because he's going to check it every turn. And I have to jam it, which means that I don't have a chance to purge, which means that HQ becomes, even easier to access. And I'm saying here this is payback for my initial good fortune, which is, it's just the way the numbers worked out is that I only saw the 1 agenda that I scored very early on, and then, basically nothing for the next 4 or 5 turns, which felt great at the time, but now I'm definitely, paying the piper for that one. So, I know that server 1 can't keep him out, and at this point, like, really my best hope is that he ends up going tag me, and I can keep pressure on him with closed accounts and prevent and like kind of encourage him to continue having tags. And then use psychographics to score out either an over-advanced Beal or priority requisition and get that all on the board. So, That's a pretty narrow path to victory when the psychographics is one of in my deck. Um, but that is definitely what I'm hoping for now. So maybe a constructive thing to think about would be, how likely am I to manufacture this situation where they're taking a lot of tags, or I have the ability to give them more than one tag and get any value whatsoever out of psychographics. Um, and I think that it's it's not totally impractical to consider that as a possibility, but to do that, like the opportunity cost of doing that is that I have a bunch of ice that doesn't end the run in this deck, and there's econ that I'm omitting so that I can have access to these tagging tools and tag punishment tools. Um, so so I don't know. I'm not sure what the better approach is with NBN. All right, he's chosen to take the tag. He does not have enough to use fairy to break this. So I'm giving him a second so he can tell me to fire it, and he doesn't. In case I miss something. But yeah, it seems like he doesn't have any way to deal with it, so I'll just fire the trace. Um, what what's annoying is that like this idea ability, like I don't even need to use it now because he's broke, and so I can't even use my sweet recurring credits. NBN's agenda composition in this format is also a little bit tricky because in faction you have Beal and Too Good to Be True, which only gives you 9 agenda points in your deck. So you need to put 11 points worth of neutral agendas in, which is like 3 Pryrec and which is like I think I've gone for a mix of false lead, private security force, and there's I think there's probably 1 Pryrec in here. I don't remember what the agenda composition is exactly, but yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's because like with Too Good to Be True and psychographics, they wanted to make sure that you had access to a lot of 3 advancement agendas, so that psychographics can do work for you even if the runner is only floating 2 tags, and let you fast advance. But at any rate, so on the plus side, he's on 3 tags. I've got 2 Data Raven counters, and he's has no, basically no credits. So I'm like, okay, well, he's probably gonna be floating these tags, and with the 2 power counters, I'm going to be able to, kind of pull up Psycho on demand. Unfortunately, since R&D is still basically undefended, he rips another 2 points off the top of it, and I'm really quite screwed at this point. So, he did steal 3 points, so if I had a punitive counter strike, I would have been able to get the win here. But I'm not playing with that card, so instead, I'll get some money, and I really need to make R&D stronger, but I don't think the Data Raven's going to do me much good at this point. I'm certainly because I won't have enough to res it over there, and so just take another credit. I don't know. Maybe I should have drawn, but I also know that he's going to be hitting HQ, so like an agenda is safer in R&D than it is anywhere else at the moment. So at this point in the game, really I should be, yeah, I don't even know what I do here, because if he's gonna tag me, he can just tear through that remote. He's on 5 points. Um, if I'm, ideally I would dig for ice, but if I'm hitting agendas, then I don't really have anywhere to put them. So yeah, I don't know if there's any good way out of this position at this point. Um, and again, if I if he hadn't killed that Enigma with Imp many turns ago, um, then I would probably not be losing nearly as much off the top of R&D, or I'd be shutting down HQ so he can't just run it whenever he wants to. So at this point, I finally have enough to actually to res the toll booth. I don't have an agenda in hand. Like, this is my opportunity to purge viruses. And now that he's on, like he's gonna be on like 8 pheromones counters. It's really, well past the time when I wanted to do this. I do get to res the toll booth, but the lose 3 credits effect doesn't do me any good because he has only 2 credits in hand. So now I'm very poor. He's poor as well. So on the plus side, I think it'll take him a little while to bounce back, and he can't really do much about this pad campaign for a couple turns. So I'm feeling like, okay, cool, we're stabilizing a little bit. Got the one toll booth down. Like, I'll probably find another piece of ice that ends the run. I can start putting stuff in this remote, and like, we're gonna be cool. Makes the run for Gabe bucks and pheromones credits. Fine, whatever. And then I remember that emergency shutdown is a card, which he immediately plays to take down my toll booth, and once again blow R&D wide open. So yeah, I probably could have conceded like immediately here, but instead I wait for him to finish the run and rip a 3-pointer off the top. So it's a good game. It's tough, really well played on my opponent's part. He really was able to make like huge profit off of HQ runs, and my mistakes in ice placement led me into a position where like I couldn't keep him out of. I couldn't shut down the HQ runs. I couldn't prevent. I couldn't tax him out of R&D or make R&D too expensive for him to get into, or even challenge a face check on R&D. So yeah, this was great play by the other Doug in the tournament, Z-Man. Yeah, it was a fun game. It was tough and it was a little bit frustrating at parts, but I did like how there was a lot of kind of calculation and thinking about like what am I going to do in a couple turns from now, which I think is a sign that it was a good match. So that's going to end this, and it was a lot of fun, and we'll see you next time.